it's widely established that at some point in 2024 a UK general election will likely be held, the first one since 2019. 5 years can completely redesign the political layout of a country, and this couldn't be more noticeable than within Scotland. From a drop in party support, reflected in disappointing polling figures, a highly publicised police probe, and the re-emergence of Scottish Labour as an opposition, it's safe to say that the SNP has faced a tough year.
The SNP and Scottish Labour are currently neck and neck in polls. While SNP popularity faces historic lows, Dr Neil McGarvey, a senior teaching fellow in politics at the University of Strathclyde, tells his opinion on the matter and states how a year could make all the difference to the party for gaining back votes.
A general election could still be over 12 months away, so a lot can happen in the next year. But as things stand, it's looking more difficult for the SNP than it was even 2-3 years ago.
Robert Johns is a politics professor at the University of Essex and principal investigator of the Scottish election study since its inception in 2007. He told us of the most crucial elements that he feels have damaged SNP voter loyalties and whether this will actually reflect in next year's election results.
There is still some dislike for Labour, and some people who have voted for Labour, especially in, for example, the Rutherglen by-election, were not wildly enthusiastic about Labour, but they were taking some enjoyment in the chance to punish the SNP for what had gone on. And you saw in the scale of the swing there, there's no way that that's a mass and long-term and enduring conversion to Labour. That's a lot of people who have voted SNP and may well again, staying at home or voting Labour on that occasion.
The climate crisis has been such a prominent concern for this generation of Scots. It's no surprise that the country's main parties are making their manifestos adopting a greener approach to running the country. We spoke to Dr Derek Evanson, a senior lecturer in environmental politics at the University of Edinburgh, to understand why Scottish voters care so much about combating climate change, as well as which parties will benefit the most from adding this issue to their manifestos in the run-up to the general election.
Labour and SNP, I don't see them as hugely different. I mean, SNP, always, what SNP is always going to do is they're always going to rhetorically position everything as a fight between Holyrood and Westminster. So the SNP is always going to say, oh, well, if only we could do more on energy security, or if only we could do this and it was actually a devolved competency that we could have jurisdiction and purview over so that we could make things better for the Scottish people, but we're being constrained by Westminster. Clearly that rhetoric is going to be different from Labour. So that will be a material difference.
The SNP have not only had Scottish Labour to contend with in terms of competition as we near the next general election. The Alba Party have recently acquired their first MSP, and their determined focus on independence poses a threat to the SNP voting alliance. We asked Charlie Abel, a two-time Alba Party candidate and former SNP member of 17 years, about why he feels the SNP have lost touch with voters and whether his party can gain big wins in 2024.
The policies they're pursuing are not ones that are going to unite Scotland. You know, the HPMAs, the gender stuff, all these things are divisive. And that's our job for an independent Scotland to sort out. We shouldn't be focusing our energies onto things like that just now and then losing people, you know.
The general gist from political experts, therefore, is that the SNP has taken a worrying dent in popularity, potentially signalling the return of Scottish Labour in power as the general election takes place next year. However, opinion polls put both parties neck and neck despite the seemingly constant range of controversies facing the SNP, from a police probe relating to possible financial mishandlings to the divisive Gender Reform Act and a confusing independence stance. But it's all to play for, as 2023 has shown that 12 months can make a huge difference to the rise or fall of any party.